Hi everybody, it's time for another episode of What It's Like to Chill Out with Ratko, Mladic, Radovan Karadzic, and Goran Hadjic, Confessions of a Female War Crimes Investigator. So let's get right to it here. Okay, here we go. I told them I was a newbie at the meeting, and I inquired where to sit, and I asked the other ambassadors from Africa what I should do. They said, just go over there, grab some papers, look like you're busy, and I did. In fact, I grabbed as many extra copies of these papers as I possibly could without looking conspicuous when noticing another peculiarity at the meeting. The meeting papers strictly indicated that these papers were strictly restricted for the eyes of the state mission heads only. In other words, only the chief ambassadors of countries that were in that closed United Nations meeting was allowed to talk about them, were allowed to show them to anybody, and it was strictly prohibited for anybody in that meeting to show anybody a paper or to talk about it. It said right on the paper, quote, to any other United Nations employee or any other mission employee or anybody else outside that meeting. It said if anyone were to do so and discuss or show these papers to any other United Nations employee or any other person that was in the meeting, they would be punished to the strictest penalties of the law, and they would be imprisoned or fined very heavily. It stated that on all the papers when I took them. And luckily, I'm not a head ambassador of any mission, so therefore I wasn't in the meeting accidentally, so therefore it's perfectly legal for me to put these private secret meeting papers out on the internet. But it's not for anybody else that was in that meeting. So you can get a glimpse of what goes on in such meetings. It's disgusting and shameful. Anyway, so I told them I was a newbie, and they told me to go grab the papers, and I did. The meeting papers indicated that they were restricted for the eyes of state mission heads, in other words, chief ambassadors of countries only, and allowing other persons and or United Nations employee to view them was a punishable legal offense. Period. Uncertain what to do, and with the meeting beginning, I merely sat there stunned. My seat and the African gentleman was sitting in next to me seemed like they were extras because they neglected having any indication regarding country origin in front of them. They had no nameplates on the table, in other words, so I felt safe. As totally immersed and interesting as I found the topics about the International Criminal Court, the African ambassador sitting to the right of me must have found it extremely boring. I say this owing to the fact that I noticed he was, during the entire meeting, he just sat there merely doodling nonsensically pictures on some legal pad he had. I think that no one took more notes than I did that day. In fact, I can be sure of it. I was especially interested in the interstate bickering about the financiering of the International Criminal Court that was newly emergent at that time, and how it should be financed, and when it did come about, if it did, which it did. Spain, the country, the Spanish ambassador was particularly forceful in vocalizing the Spanish opinion that the countries giving the most monetary contributions to the court itself ought to have more power over both its staffing, future judicial appointments, and the verdicts of guilt or innocence, just like International Action Center, Ramsey Clark, and Noam Chomsky have said previously. Now, what those people, Ramsey Clark and Noam Chomsky, had said were justifiably confirmed because I witnessed it myself and heard it with my own eyes and ears. The court itself was a great travesty of justice, and I was actually witnessing quarrels between countries insofar as controlling the court's judges and verdicts based on financial contributions only, rather than based on law and true international justice. The most shocking point of the meeting for me, I used to be an advocate of the court, but the most shocking point of that meeting to establish the International Court, the preparatory meeting for me, was when the Israeli ambassador, who was sitting across from me and next to Richard Holbrooke, openly admitted to the other attendees that Israel was very indifferent to war crimes, generally speaking, altogether, crimes against humanity, and Israel in no manner would support any international structure limiting the Israeli ability for practicing war and peace against any other state party it considered a threat to its national interest. The ambassador representing the United States that day strongly and equally explicitly backed the Israeli position, which was Mr. Richard Holbrooke. The Spanish ambassador was sitting all the way to the left of me on the corner. She had glasses and short straight hair. She was kind of cute in the dress. I remember what they looked like. Richard Holbrooke had pox marks on his face. He had thick, square eyeglass. He didn't look at all as they must really touch up his photos because he doesn't look at anything at all like he does in the news. He looked horrible. The Israeli ambassador was sitting to the right of him, and Mr. Richard Holbrooke was sitting across from me. Richard Holbrooke strongly and equally backed the Israeli position, making clear the American attendance there that day was more for information gathering purposes and show than true concern for international law, world peace, and social justice. When the meeting ended, I slipped quickly out the front entrance of the United Nations, notes and papers in my hand. I would read them in detail later that evening. Arnold Stark was there, and he picked me up in the front office of the United Nations. We jumped in his car and left back to New Jersey. When I attended these ICC preparatory meetings, at the end, the first ambassador to the Bosnian mission, a Serbian doctor who worked in the mission with Darko Trifundovich, and when I was there in New York City, the Serbian doctor with the glasses did come in as a witness, testifying that I was present, but only for the last 10 minutes. He didn't take very many notes, but he was very tall, he's blonde, and he had a legal yellow pad and pen in hand. He sat in the back seat by the chair where you first walk in, and he left after maybe 9 minutes. He didn't see much of the meeting. I did. When I attended the meetings, yes, the first ambassador, came in, but only for a short while as my witness to being there. Noteworthy of mentioning was this man was a doctor, and when he returned from a trip from the former Yugoslavia, the Republic of Srpska, he was nice enough to bring me an alternative medicine, a liquid lemon mix that he was able to bring in with diplomatic privilege to help me wean off of some of the medicines I was on, and I'm eternally grateful to him for this. He was a very nice man. Arnold met him as well. And he gave this with me to help me withdraw from the American narcotics I was on. Darko insisted because he was worried about me overdosing on all my American medications, and I appreciate that also. I always wondered if Dr. Radovan Karadzic had made this elixir for me himself. I never will truly know, but it's not out of the question because Darko told me it was an alternative medicine, and Radovan Karadzic did work as an alternative medicine practitioner. It was lemon with lemon slices mixed with herbs and lemon slice. It tasted very good. I'll stop here for this evening. I hope you enjoyed this meeting, and I hope you will enjoy me again. Thank you.